Okay, so I am here with Adam Morley, another creative, another director, and we're going to chat a little bit today about mental health in the arts, in theatre and in film, which I know you're a really big advocate of in terms of the stuff that you've done in the past.
Yeah, that's right, Alasdair. And I think I've always pushed for positive engagement about mental health, and specifically in the arts, where it's somehow we found ourselves in a position where the arts fell behind a lot of other industries in terms of good practice and good mental health practice. And what was, for me growing up as a kid, a safe place, a place where I could be unique and different and not feel isolated because of that. The arts gave me that. When I joined that world as an adult and as a working professional, I suddenly found all of that disappeared. And it became this very odd mixture of narcissism and bullying that really disturbed me. And this idea of tough love without any of the love. Yeah. And I found that the processes were outdated. The conceptual thinking behind how to gain artistic results, especially looking at the role of the director, were archaic and probably weren't very good back when these types of things were acceptable, but was still standard practice at drama schools and universities. So my campaign, albeit on an individual level, has been about good practice, strong mental health. I validate a lot of BAs and MAs in performance. So I'll sit down and look at the degree course that needs to be validated by an outside professional. And then I'll always say, where's the mental health provision in this? Where are
what example are we setting?
Exactly that. Yeah, how are we helping people here? Because this idea of knocking someone down and rebuilding them, which has been a staple of some training providers.
It still is a staple of it.
It's not only is it outdated, it's also very dangerous. It's nonsense that was never a good idea. And what it does, Alasdair, and I'm not going to mince my words, it serves egomaniacs.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with you 100%. Agree with you. And I think there's a certain degree to which what's been passed down psychosomatically through the generations of aspiring actors is that it's good to go into a rehearsal studio and get shouted at or get berated at because it makes them feel alive in the process. And it's nonsense. It's
gaslighting, actually. What we're doing here is we're saying, just because I was treated badly going up, doesn't mean that the next generation coming up should also be treated badly to learn some sort of life lesson. Like, you know what, people's lives are hard enough. We don't need to toughen them up. We need to help them and guide and support. And that doesn't mean a lack of discipline. My rehearsal rooms are incredibly disciplined and effective. But I don't need to destroy anyone to achieve that. I don't need people scared of me. And when I first started off as a director, I was so insecure about my own ability and position that I was a tyrant, a horrible monster. It took me a while to grow and to develop and to realize that you can achieve just as good results in a disciplined way without creating an atmosphere of fear.
Through empowering people to want to improve themselves. Because the unique thing about our industry, of course, is that we work together for a finite period of time, and then we all go off in our own directions, and then the actors that are working with anonymous, I might not be working with on the next one, and the same with the crew, and we don't realize the effect that the way that we talk to these people and the way that we communicate then has an effect on the next project and the projects after that. So it's that domino effect.
And especially when you're dealing with young performers and young creatives, people just coming into the arts, because they think the sun shines out of our backsides and we're God's gift to humanity. We're not. And we need to be really careful about that. I'll give you an example. There's a drama school, I shan't name them, but a very well-known one in London, asked me to take on a year group and direct a show. And they were having issues with this year group. It was a bad mixture of personalities, or something was going wrong. And their remit to me was, can you break them and build them up again? And I was like, absolutely not. I can't do that, because I will turn up for 6 weeks, have this incredibly disciplined process, zero tolerance for bullshit, and then I go.
Yeah.
Where's the pastoral care? Where's the long-term vision? And one of the things I'm finding is we are telling graduates it's going to be really difficult and you need to be mentally tough and all of these different things. And then we're just abandoning them.
Yeah.
And again, once the money stops, the care of duty stops. And I'm like, well, we also need to think about the long-term responsibility we have for people that we are looking after. And the arts has always attracted a proportion of people who are fragile. I don't mean that in any sort of negative sense, but that feel safe.
Yeah.
And then they get exploited for...
Yeah, and I don't think we're doing a good enough job in even educating them about how tough the industry is, because they're so used to hearing that same cardboard cutout sentence of, it's going to be tough, it's going to be tough. And everybody, in an egotistical sense, thinks, well, it'll be different for me because I'm special. And then they come out of the industry, and then sure enough, 6 months, 12 months down the line, they realize, oh, it's not going to be different for me. And where's that security blanket? Well, like you say, because the money's gone, from the drama school's perspective, the support's gone as well.
I think actually what you just said there is so right and so succinct, and they absolutely do have that concept. And it doesn't matter how many of us turn around and say, they're still going to think it's going to be okay for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, you know what it's like with friends and things. You see someone's on the way for a car crash and you're like, there's nothing I can say or do that's going to help you now.
100%.
But actually being there to help pick up the pieces has more value.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the other way in which our industry can change, can do better, is also in the way that we tell stories. And this is one of the big things that I want to do differently with Anonymous, because it's about addiction, and it's about not just addiction to alcohol, but it's about it's set at an AA meeting. And obviously from a mental health perspective, this is a huge issue during lockdown, and will be an even bigger issue coming out of lockdown. But what was important was not to go down the cut and paste Hollywood method of demonizing the affliction, demonizing the substance, which isn't really that helpful, just because it's sexy and puts bums on seats.
Totally
what we try to do differently is actually set at an AA meeting where we get to meet the heroes that are actually in recovery, and we get to see their lives after they've made the decision to go, right, enough, I can beat this. And
well,
it's in that context.
I come from a long and illustrious lines of alcoholics, and my late mother drank herself to death. She was an alcoholic. She refused help. There was nothing I could do. I mean, I even tried to get a section.
Right.
And the doctor was like, she's sane. If she wants to drink herself to death, that's it. When I found her, she had 60 or 70 bottles of wine empty around her.
Oh my goodness. That's tragic.
And you know what, up until that point, up until I'd seen it firsthand, it's not that I didn't have respect for addiction. I didn't understand how powerful the hold was on someone. And when you look at someone educated with a good career, grandchildren to enjoy, retirement coming up, everything to live for, just completely disintegrate. And
for no logical reason.
None whatsoever.
Yeah.
None more, and it can affect anybody. I mean, one of the things I like to...
That's important. What you're saying, because it's a huge element of what we've done with the film as well. Is we've made sure that from a casting perspective, we're not being racist or elitist or sexist or there's a spread of people in the room that represent all age groups and et cetera, because like you say, it can hit at any point.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I'm very conscious of, because my grandfather, both my grandparents were alcoholics, as was my mum. And when I started in the arts, it's slightly better now, but drinking was just
everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember with one director, I was an assistant at the time, I was 17, 18, and drinks post-rehearsal were compulsory. It was happening. And my job was to get him drunk. A producer would give me a wad of notes and tell me to get him drunk, keep him away from the boys in the cast.
Right.
And send him on a taxi home. And the same said producer, and again, I won't mention where and who these people are, but the same said producer would then come into rehearsals, for instance, and he'd be like, oh, is Adam available? I just need him for a meeting. And he didn't. He wanted to go to the pub, but he didn't want to be on his own. So sort of 10 a.m., I'd be in the pub with him in Whitechapel. And a lot of them, when shows were happening, I would go to all the local pubs around the theatre with a note and a list of names of the people that weren't allowed to be served. Right. And as the show went, the ran extended, the list of pubs grew wider and wider and wider as I'd have to go.
Because they would find the next one that they could get served at, and yeah.
And you know what? I tell this story, right? And I tell it sometimes as an amusing anecdote and about the good old days and things. But if you actually think about the content, it's really tragic. It's really tragic how much alcohol was involved.
Yeah.
And the lack of care there was in place.
Yeah.
Whereas if you work for, I don't know, a big finance company or an IT company or something, and you have a problem, there's going to be HR procedure in place
absolutely.
to get you help.
And not just that. If you work at a in Canary Wharf at a finance company, so use the example you put, and you turn up to work drunk, you last about 5 minutes and you're gone.
Yeah.
And routinely, it's almost encouraged in the arts, particularly in the theatre, I think. I remember the first time I went to Los Angeles to try and sell a script. I learned a lot of lessons on that trip. But amongst them was very, and this was in 2013, and amongst them was very much at the center of it was there's two types of people in the industry. There's people who drink and do drugs and talk about being filmmakers, and there's people that are filmmakers.
Yeah.
And I very much wanted to be in this category. So, this was October 2013, and I stopped drinking. Yeah. And I haven't touched a drop since. I'd never have called myself an addict, but there was a conscious decision that I had to take after I stepped out of the world of business and finance and whatever I was doing before into the arts, and discovered, right, this is prevalent. This is something that's everywhere in this industry. And I need to make a conscious decision.
Yes, it is. And it's often seen as almost acceptable.
Yeah.
Which is where it's so wrong, where you're saying, actually, there's nothing glamorous about this. And there's nothing acceptable about it. And for something that is heralded as liberal and open and inclusive, is nothing of the sort. And we need to, what's been so good about the pandemic is it has allowed for quite a lot of reflection. And quite a lot of industry within the arts to turn around and say, well, yes, actually there is a problem. We do have a problem here, both in terms of equality and diversity, and for people to not be scared of admitting that. And you see, this is wherein the issue lies, is you have a hierarchical structure that is colonial in its approach. It's divide and rule, with a handful of people who have control and dominance, and they create this almost abusive type of relationship with the rest of the arts. And people are finding themselves desperate for validation and inclusion because we've sold them a lie about what is success and the value of it. And it creates such pandemics of anxiety that I have seen firsthand affect so many people because they aren't getting the right information or the definition of what success and sustainability is has been perverted into something that is entirely unrealistic. They feel like failures. So I think we need to address these things. We need to be able to talk about them. We need to change practice at training level.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
And address that as well, to say, okay, what are you doing at this university? What are you doing at this drama school? What are you offering? What's the point of this degree course? And what's the structure of it? Where's the value added?
Beyond the drama school or the university making a bit of money, which seems to be the case in a lot of the places that I've been into and experienced similar situations to what you were talking about earlier. And you realize very quickly that the individual student actor doesn't actually matter a jot to the drama school. And what baffles me is when, and most drama schools do this, they'll charge to have somebody come and audition. So you pay to go and audition, and then you get in there and you think, and they pretty much take everybody anyway.
It's,
you know what I mean?
Some places will literally, anyone that can breathe that walks through the door is in. And other places they're slightly more discerning. But then there's another, I remember once getting lambasted online for daring to question, why is there an audition fee? And so, well, the industry professionals got to be paid for, the room's got to be paid for. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But presumably you're already paying for that room. So it's in a budget line somewhere. And this industry professional, if they're not an external practitioner, there's someone who is salaried.
Yes, 100%.
In this building.
Just a way to make more money. Just a way to make more money.
It's literally just a tax. It's literally just a tax. I'm like,
and it's because they can get away with it. It's because it's something that's systemic and that everybody does. So you turn around and you go, well, if everybody else is getting away with it, we'll do it too.
Exactly. And this is where the problem lies, because they'll go, oh, what you need to do is audition for 5 drama schools. And I say, okay, well, if you aren't rich and you don't live in London, so that's 250 quid just for the right to audition. Well, then transport, accommodation, you're looking at about £1,000.
Showreel, headshots, all that. Just to become an actor that's going to be someone who is realistically, for the first 2 years of their career at least, unpaid in a lot of the work that you do. It's going to cost you, aside from the actual cost of the training itself, it's going to cost you a couple of £1,000.
Just for that. And then you have a position where, now don't get me wrong, I work with and have worked for tremendous institutions that go above and beyond. And there has been a sea change of thought over the last 10 years. It's a slow process. You then have visiting practitioners, people like me that turn up. And again, there's not enough work being done to ensure that we're the appropriate people to have working with students, where it's not about our ego, but it's about the student experience. And again, you have people there who are on this mad trip.
Power trip, yeah.
Just exactly, a huge power trip. You're like, my God, what are you doing? You're not being reviewed for this. Ticket sales don't matter. This isn't.
Yeah, you're right. And then that has that effect on the anxiety and on the mental health of the actor. And let's not pretend that this stuff doesn't go on in other industries, but it does. It is a huge part of our industry.
It is.
And like I said, and then the other side of it is we're then bastardizing the experience by only focusing on the negative when we do artistic adaptations and interpretations of what the illness happens to be. I spoke to somebody later on last week, I think it was, and she was diagnosed as borderline bipolar, and whenever she sees somebody who's bipolar in the film industry or in the arts, they're always psychotic to the point of being a murderer or this, that, and the other. And obviously that's true in some cases, but it doesn't make her life any easier when she has to go and turn around to somebody she meets on the street or wherever and explain that this is her illness without getting that reaction of, run away and then increasing their anxiety.
Stereotyping has always been a problem, and I put a tweet out about it recently where I was saying that the creative arts actually lacks a lot of imagination.
Yeah.
We're lazy. We're lazy. We're absolutely. I guess someone was like, "How dare you criticize creatives? This is all money men." And I was like, "No, it's not. I'm so sorry, but I'm a creative. I've worked with lots of them. They are lazy as sin." Because anything that challenges our perceived notion of the world is too much for our fragile egos to cope with. So the fact is that there is a difference between someone from Bangladesh, someone from Pakistan, someone from India, but we're too lazy to research that. So they become terrorist number 4. Yeah. And rather than taking the time to consider what autism is, or what a mental health condition is, or what a disability is, and to think, can we work within that? And is there something we can do, like you say, to relieve some stigma and educate? We go to the nearest stereotype we can find, and hopefully they'll win an Oscar for it. Like
you're right.
Shocking.
And it's like I said earlier, it's that cut and paste attitude of we know this makes money, we know this sells, and rather than actually be creative and find another way to make it sell, which is actually a bit more in line with the real experience, we'll just do this because we know this sells. And it's a shame, because it means the creative industry is less creative than they would have us believe. But it's our responsibility as filmmakers, as writers, as theatre directors, to start and go, no, we're not going to make just this same cut and paste story again, because it's been made too many times before. We have to look at it from a different, and so the fight, if you like, starts with us. So I mean, and of course the flip side to that then is, well, then where do you get the money from? Because the money's coming from the people that are telling you to do it this way. So with Anonymous, what I've done is gone down the crowdfunding route, which I've never done before. Every other film I've made has been financed by an investor or a production company or whatever it happens to be. This one is going to be as many people as possible putting a tenner in or 15 quid in, and then we can actually make this film, and we can do it in a way that artistically represents a positive way of looking at this problem and saying,
well, I think,
go on.
Alasdair, what sounds really important about this film is there needs to be this grown-up conversation about mental health and addiction. And as you say, putting a realistic prism on that for distribution, to show the audience and let the audience take ownership of that, and say to them, this is our parents and this is our friends and these are our colleagues. This isn't an Oscar nod as a vehicle for a celebrity, and this isn't cheap stereotyping. This is a glimpse of reality. Yeah. And that post the isolation we've all been faced with, there is going to be some serious problems.
Yeah, and 100%. One of the first things I saw after lockdown started was I was in my corner shop and I just walked in and there was a guy unloading a basket of alcohol at the till, and there's a smile on his face like, this is going to be my lockdown. 5 bottles of vodka, 2 crates of lager, and it's a smile. That was what he was planning to do for the next however long lockdown lasts. He's going to come out of the lockdown not a well man. There's no two ways about it.
Well, you just have to look at the UK's relationship with alcohol, and it's not healthy. It's never been a healthy relationship with alcohol. One of the things I look at and I teach is about networking. So actually, what does it mean? Everyone goes, you should network. Great. What does that mean? And I will take a cohort, for instance, down to a bar. Now, that's not to drink alcohol, but it's to be in that environment. And whether you drink or not, that's fine. It's immaterial. But it's, how can you be in this environment, have this type of conversation, but maintain your professionalism? Because there is a difference in networking and socializing. And the way that business people do deals on golf courses, it's similar for us, but in a social setting.
Yeah.
So again, how to have that type of responsible relationship with alcohol, with establishments that sell alcohol. And I think one of the things we have is this really odd relationship with booze and the way it's tied up to British culture, and is almost this badge of pride for being uncontrollably drunk, and this honor that comes with getting. It's so weird. This need to go out and get smashed, regardless of the consequences. And I always say this to student casts. I'm like, we're going into production. If this week going out on the sesh is more important than rehearsals, you need to reevaluate what's going on. Like, you literally don't stand a chance at that point. Yeah. If being at a club, a dreadful club at 4 o'clock in the morning, drinking watered down shots is the most important thing in your life, there's something very bad happening. And culturally, we need to assess this and ask ourselves, why do the French not have the same type of problem that we have?
It's the gratification they get from letting their hair down. And you think we're so blessed to, apparently, certainly in my case anyway, be working in an industry where I really properly adore and love what I do, to the point where I have no need to go to a club or a bar or a pub or anywhere else to seek gratification or downtime, because the only place I want to be is on a film set. And if you're not wired that way, then maybe you're not in the right industry, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You need to find the things that make you happy and drive towards a way that you can turn that into a career. That's the way to live your life.
And actually, it leads us back to training. It leads us back to that position of going, sometimes we need to decide, is this about making money or is this about creating artists? And are we right to turn around to someone and say, maybe you should consider something else, and maybe you should think about community theatre or doing other skills, because it might not be right for you. But again,
and you have that conversation, but to say that to somebody in any setting, in my experience, has always been the same thing you said earlier about someone's in for a car crash. Doesn't matter what you say to them, because they're going to change the world, because they're going to be the next Daniel Day-Lewis or the next Meryl Streep, or that's all Denzel Washington. All they see is, I'm the next one of those.
But again, as I always use sort of Denzel Washington as an example. First of all, a brilliant personality actor. But I say Denzel Washington didn't become one of the great actors of our generation because he went to drama school and then stopped practicing, stopped being disciplined at his art and his art form. And there's very, very few artists out there that are living catastrophes. And the ones that we have, that's our fault. We've allowed this situation to happen. I say the same thing about Love Island. Love Island is one step removed from the Hunger Games. And I'm not actually exaggerating here.
I try not to watch that stuff. It's such car crash TV. And it's the dumbing down of a nation in terms of saying this is good entertainment. This is not good entertainment.
It pacifies them. It also is inherently cruel. We set people up to feel emotional pain through selective editing. So someone's made a choice to show them negativity and
create a bad guy. They're creating bad antagonists and protagonists. And the truth is that there's no such thing as a perfect protagonist and a perfect antagonist. And when you're writing a piece of art, you have to make sure that all of your characters are shades of grey.
Because people are.
People are, exactly. And then we get that people turn to addiction because they feel like they're not represented, because all they see is perfect protagonists. And they go, well, I'm not that. I'm not perfect. So I must be this guy over here. I must be the antagonist. And then the idea of cycle of self-destruction.
Well, think about this. You and I are probably similar ages. The idea of filters. I didn't grow up with any of that. But there's generations of children growing up with the perfect image filtered through computer technology to augment the reality of how they look in order to fit an idea of beauty. Now, if you actually break that down into its core components, we're telling everyone that you aren't good enough. That you're so not good enough that you need to be turned into an animation of sorts in order to be acceptable. And my goodness, that is a scary message.
We're literally destroying people before they even had a chance to step in the ring, as it were. We're not preparing people well enough. And then we wonder why people turn to... I spoke to several, since I launched the Anonymous campaign, so many actors that I've worked with previously have come to me and said, this is incredible that you're doing this, because this is something that I struggled with. And they never told anybody before. And it's lovely that I feel like, that they feel like I'm providing them with an excuse to step forward and go, this is me, this is who I am, and owning up their addiction, owning up their mental health affliction.
Yeah.
But the fact that we as a society don't support people to do that anyway is a damning indictment of where we're at.
Isn't it just? And it really is. And you just have to look at how we deal with celebrity and footballers and people in the national limelight, and how badly handled they often are, especially when they stop becoming income worthy. And we need to, there's so much we need to address, but actually as artists and as storytellers, we're in a unique position to do that. And to affect that change. So something like Anonymous will have a profound impact.
I sincerely hope so. I really do.
It's necessary. It's necessary.
It is necessary, because because if other people are going to cut and paste something from me, then I want it to be something that helps. I don't want them to cut and paste the stuff that's going to hurt people. I want them to cut and paste the thing that will empower people and help people and boost people. And that's how we as artists can make the world a better place.
Well, exactly. And just, I mean, to highlight your Back to the Future poster there in the background, which I love. One of the great films of all time. I love it. Absolutely love it. There's nothing wrong with entertainment. And entertainment is a beautiful thing. And there's nothing wrong with commerciality. There's nothing wrong with creating something that lets someone relax for a couple of hours. And that is just as important. And the artists have spent a really good at doing that, and escaping realities and disbeliefs. We don't want everything in your face. But when things are, they need to be right, because they will have the same impact. And we need to stop poverty porn. This idea of representation of voices when there are no voices in that group behind any of the processes creating it. The glorification of certain things, or the vilification of others, mental health conditions and so on. And saying, so separating those things, saying there's a room for entertainment, and we're not attacking that at all. It's a brilliant thing. Keep that.
Well, this Robert Zemeckis being the perfect example. I love this film because it's clever. I love this film because you watch it and you learn something new each time you watch it. You see an extra little arc, and it's one of the best screenplays ever written from my perspective, because it's clever and it tries to do more than just. And if it was just focused on a reasonably good-looking kid gets into a cool sports car time machine, and that's the end of the premise, then it wouldn't be as good. It wouldn't be as iconic. It wouldn't be on your wall right now, would it? It wouldn't be on my wall right now, and it'd still get made, and it would probably more likely get made in that way today. It wouldn't get made like this today. It wouldn't get made like this.
Absolutely, and I think that it's really interesting. But also, what's very interesting, I think, especially for filmmakers, is the relationship between creative and consumers changed, and people are beginning to accept that this is a medium. In a way that maybe they wouldn't have done. I think that the pandemic and lockdown has moved the relationship between consumer and creative and this type of interface forward faster than it would have done. Because the Zoom technology and the other platforms
already existed,
already existed, but the technology isn't quite there yet. But people are prepared to accept that now, because it's been a bigger part of their reality. So that you're not as restricted as one was by money. That you're saying, okay, I may not have the production values that I normally would, or I may not be able to shoot the green screen, or this may not go on reds, or whatever that's going on. But what I can do is tell a damn fine story that reflects reality. And I actually have an audience built in and a network I can develop of my own without the need of the layers of middle management and distribution networks and all the say that then ends up making work so vanilla, because every step of the way there's been another voice. And I'm really excited by the online work I'm seeing, the creativity that's going on, the connections that are being created.
Yeah, and the people that are saying about lockdown, and I'd like to put myself sort of in this category, without wanting to toot my own horn, is saying I'm not just going to sit here and waste 3 months or 4 months or however it ends up being. I'm actually going to create something and make something and say I'm going to use this time and give back to the world in some way.
Absolutely.
You know, it's great. Look, Adam, I'm conscious that you've got places to go and people to see, as have I. So I am going to thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure we will catch up on the other side of this pandemic. And please do, like I said, look out for Anonymous and
yeah, let me know if I can promote it. Just send. I've got a good social media following,
amazing.
So send stuff out my way.
Wonderful.
This is brilliant and needs to happen.
Okay, thanks, Adam. I will.
Thanks, Alasdair.
I'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Take care.